Imagine, like 16 years, right, behind bars for something. For a crime you say you didn't commit.
Yeah.
That's Nathan Medina's life.
Right.
Convicted of murder back in 2008.
Uh-huh.
He's always said he didn't do it.
Yeah.
And you guys, our listeners, you've asked for a deep dive on this case.
Yeah, it's a wild
Oh,
one.
is it ever? Stacks of police reports. We've got court transcripts, even Nathan's own writing about that day.
It's a lot.
Yeah, so.
Let's untangle this thing together.
Yeah.
See if we can figure out what really happened. Way back in 2008.
It's a twisted story, that's for sure.
Okay.
But to really get this, I think we have to rewind a bit, even before that day in March.
Okay, so this wasn't just like a random attack.
No, not at all. There was a history, kind of a tension simmering below the surface.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so what, like a grudge? Yeah, you could say that. At the center of it all, you've got Nathan's family and Beverly Rhodes.
Okay.
She's the victim's mother.
Right, Joshua.
And it all goes back to, a home construction project. Things went very wrong.
Okay, hold on. So we're talking about a construction dispute
Uh-huh.
that somehow what explodes into a murder.
That's the gist, yeah.
Okay.
See, Rhodes, she hired Nathan's father, Tony,
Okay.
to build an addition on her house.
Mhm.
But her story is Nathan, he was a problem on that job site. Hostile, incompetent. She even said he was unwelcome there.
Really? But didn't Nathan have proof he was actually hired for that project? Like, wouldn't there be records?
Oh, absolutely. And this is important. There's a personal check from Rhodes to Nathan himself, for extra work even. Directly contradicts her whole story about him being banned from the property. It's just one of, frankly, many inconsistencies that make this case so interesting.
Wow. So she's making him out to be the bad guy here.
Seems that way.
But if that's true, then why is she paying him extra? And then there's this whole bad check thing. I keep seeing that in the files. Was that another clash between them?
Oh, absolutely. The bad check thing is a prime example of the way Rhodes operates throughout this whole thing. She claims Nathan wrote her a bad check, right? But you look at the bank records and she's using all these different aliases for the transactions.
What?
Yeah. Makes you wonder about her motives.
Right.
And her credibility, especially with her history.
History. Wait, are we talking about, like, her ex-husband, Dusty? And those warnings he gave. Didn't he say something about her burning bridges? Or should I say burning houses?
It's creepy, right? That warning from Dusty adds a whole other layer to this. He described her as vindictive, someone who holds a grudge. Seriously.
Wow.
And you combine that with these aliases, potential money troubles, you really start to wonder, who is Beverly Rhodes?
Like a character in a movie or something.
Right.
But this is real life. We're talking about a real murder. And March 20th, 2008, that's the day things take a dark turn.
No doubt. That day changes everything.
Yeah.
We'll get into the crime scene. It was chaos, an intruder, there was pepper spray, a struggle, then the gunshot. But here's the thing. You start comparing everyone's story about what went down, the pieces, they just don't fit.
Yeah, okay, I see that. It really is true. That day, the murder, it's like the whole case swings on that.
Yeah.
And I guess the best place to start is with that 911 call.
Okay.
The one Rhodes made right after the shooting.
Mm.
But you said things didn't add up.
Right. Yeah.
So what's the deal with that call?
Well, here's the thing. Parts of it, they were kept from the jury at the trial.
They weren't allowed to hear it, the whole thing.
Nope. And those missing pieces, they're huge, like really important. In the transcript we do have, you hear Rhodes, clear as day, she says, Nathan Medina just shot my son.
Okay.
But, and this is the disturbing part, she also says, and I quote, I really couldn't see, but it had to be him because we don't have any other enemies.
She says that, word for word.
Word for word. I mean, you think about it.
It's right there in black and white.
Exactly.
That should have been a huge red flag right from the get-go.
You'd think so, right?
For the investigators. I mean, come on.
Huge.
How can you hear that and not, I don't know.
And imagine the jury. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
How could they not be swayed by that?
Right.
It's like she's saying she doesn't really know.
It completely contradicts everything she says later.
Because on the stand, she's all, oh, I saw his face clear as day. It was Nathan, no doubt.
Yep. Convenient how that memory improved, right? Under oath, suddenly she's got perfect recall.
Right. And it's not just her memory, is it? The details about what the intruder looked like, they change too.
Exactly. Like, take the mask.
The mask.
Yeah, in the first police interview, she mentions it like 5 times. He was wearing a mask. He had a mask on. But at the trial, not a word about a mask. Suddenly, she saw his whole face.
Wow. So many inconsistencies. Makes you wonder if anything she said was true.
Exactly. And speaking of inconsistencies, We got to talk about Sean Mendel.
Oh, yeah, the star witness.
Right. He was connected to Nathan and the victim, already messy. But his story, it's all over the place.
Yeah, okay, so walk me through this. What did Mendel say?
So in his first interview with the police, he says flat out multiple times, I don't think Nathan did it.
No, he said that.
He even gives a description of the intruder, super detailed, says the guy had this shriveled up face, like a meth addict.
Nothing like me.
Not even close. But then
at the trial.
at the trial, he's totally confident. Yep, that's the guy. I saw him pull the trigger. It was Nathan.
What explains that? That's a complete 180.
Well, here's the thing. A recording came out later.
Okay.
Conversation between Mendel and Detective McColgan right before the photo lineup. And in that recording, you can hear McColgan, clear as day. He's feeding Mendel information about the case, telling him that Rhodes already ID'd Nathan.
Hold on. They're coaching the witness before he even sees the lineup.
Yep.
That throws the whole idea out the window. You can't do that.
Exactly. And it gets worse. Detective Reese, he was there for that conversation, right? Later on, he writes up the sworn statement for the arrest warrant.
Okay.
And he says Nathan was positively identified by 3 eyewitnesses, but we know Mendel had doubts.
Right.
And then there was another potential witness, Longfellow, his audio, mysteriously missing.
Oh, come on. That's convenient. So we've got potentially coerced testimony, evidence that vanishes. It's like someone really wants to make sure Nathan goes down for this.
Right. And we haven't even gotten to the physical evidence yet.
There's got to be something concrete, right? Something that ties Nathan to the crime scene.
Well, that's where the prosecution's case gets even shakier. They made a big deal about this arson kit they found at Rhodes' house.
Arson kit?
Yeah, lighter fluid, the whole 9 yards. Sounds bad, right?
Yeah, it does. Except no fingerprints, no DNA.
Exactly. Nothing. Not a trace of Nathan on any of it. And nobody even saw the guy carrying an arson kit. And if you believe Rhodes' story, he was already there with a gun. Doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
No, it really doesn't.
Yeah.
It's like they wanted to make Nathan look dangerous, so they threw in the arson kit.
Right.
Even though it didn't really fit. And what about the gun? Where did they find that?
The gun. That's a whole other thing. It wasn't even Nathan's gun. It was his fiance's bunny, supposedly found in his truck.
But isn't that a little too convenient? The murder weapon just happens to be in his truck.
Right. It's almost too perfect. Makes you wonder if maybe it was planted there.
And don't forget about the cell phone. Yeah, conveniently left in his jacket pocket.
Oh, yeah, the cell phone. That he wasn't even using that day, according to him.
It's like every time you turn around, there's another coincidence.
It's a lot of coincidences. Makes you question the whole thing.
It's like they had this story about Nathan, and they were sticking to it no matter what. But there was that one thing, remember, that they kept bringing up, the gunshot residue.
Oh, the GSR, yeah. On Nathan's jacket sleeves. You know, that's a perfect example of how even, like, scientific evidence can be tricky.
How so?
Well, the amount they found, it was tiny, like really small. More likely it got there from something else, not from firing a gun over and over.
Contamination, they call it.
Exactly. And here's the thing that always gets me. They found this GSR, right? But no blood on the jacket. No pepper spray either.
But didn't Rhodes say the intruder was holding her during the attack?
That's her story. Said he held her close while he was attacking her son. So you'd think in all that chaos, his clothes, they'd have something on them.
Right. It doesn't really add up, does it?
Ah.
Okay, so we've got iffy witness testimony, evidence that appears and disappears like magic, and now even the physical evidence is questionable. It's making my head spin. So what did the defense do? Did they have anything to fight back with?
Well, they did bring in an expert, Dr. Deborah Davis. She specialized in eyewitness testimony. The idea was to show how unreliable both Rhodes and Mendel's stories were.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Well, the judge, he put some serious limits on what she could even talk about. She couldn't discuss the specifics of the case, and get this, she wasn't allowed to even hear the 911 calls or read all the witness interviews.
Hold on, what? That's like bringing in a world-class chef to judge a cooking contest, but then you only let them smell the dishes. What's the point?
Right. It makes you wonder. But even with all that, there was still one person in that courtroom who wasn't buying it. Juror number 8.
Juror number 8.
This juror, they were asking all the right questions, wanted to hear those missing 911 calls, kept pushing for more information. They were the voice of reasonable doubt, you know?
Which is kind of the whole point of a jury, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So what happened to juror number 8?
Dismissed. before deliberations even started, replaced with an
Are
alternate.
you serious?
Yeah.
It's like every time something comes up that might help Nathan, it either disappears, gets tossed out, or they just ignore it completely.
That's suspicious, to say the least. And through it all, you've got Nathan sitting there in the courtroom insisting he's innocent.
Yep. He says this whole thing was a setup from the very beginning.
Speaking of which, we haven't even talked about that break-in at Nathan's place a couple days before the murder.
Oh, yeah, that whole thing.
He said there was a suspicious van outside his house, his doors were unlocked, lighter fluid was missing. Sounds like something out of a movie.
It's a weird one, for sure, and the prosecution, they never really explained it.
What's there to explain? It's a break-in.
Here's the kicker. Nathan, he wrote down the name of the company on that van.
He did. And
It belonged to Sean Mendel. You're kidding. So not only is his testimony about that day totally shaky, but now he's tied to a possible break-in at Nathan's house 2 days before the murder.
2 days. It's a lot to unpack.
It really is. So where does that leave us? What are we supposed to think? If Nathan didn't do it, why would someone go through all that trouble to frame him?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Was it just about that construction dispute, or was there something more, something in Rhodes' past, like we talked about?
What about the insurance fraud angle? Didn't Nathan mention that at some point?
He did. It's a tangled web, that's for sure. We got two sides of the story. On one side, you've got the prosecution. They're saying it's revenge, a guy pushed too far. And then there's Nathan. He's saying he was set up, that he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
And this is what's so fascinating about these deep dives. There's no easy answers. We've laid out the facts, the inconsistencies, the different points of view. Now it's up to you.
Exactly. You get to decide what you believe. Whose story makes more sense to you? Who seems more credible?
And what does that tell you about the justice system? This case, it shows how easily things can get twisted, how much power a good story has, and how hard it can be to separate fact from fiction. It makes you think.
It does.
It makes you realize that justice isn't always served. Sometimes the truth, it stays hidden. We may never know for sure what happened on March 20, 2008, but we can look closely, we can question what we're told, and we can stay open to other possibilities.
That's how we make informed decisions.
Exactly. And that is the power of a deep dive.